Hi, everybody. Welcome, welcome. Thank you for joining. We're going to get started pretty much straight away because we've got a lot to get through in today's session. So welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm Emma Bracegirdle. I'm the founder of the Saltways, and we are a video production company specializing in ethical filmmaking and charities, ethical filmmaking for charities and nonprofits. Before we get started, just a couple of quick things. If you have any questions at any point during the session, just pop them in the Q&A box and then we'll gather them up for the panel discussion at the end. And we'll make sure there's either proper time left at the end to answer those questions, or we'll send a follow-up email if we don't get time to get round to them all. But yeah, we're really excited to have you all here today. So to get you started, I'm just going to share a really quick video about the Saltways and what we do.
The passion of the people got this place built. That has had an incomparable impact on my life, and it's made me who I am today. I can't put into words what they've done for me.
Even the littlest thing gives you that independence back, and that's what people want.
I want to help the next generation, so leaving a gift in my will can do that. I'm going to be changing the way that people are seen in society. How are you?
Yeah. Speaking to someone's hard, but once you start, you'll get everything off your chest and you'll feel free again.
This was the one thing that really helped me cope with life and start seeing a brighter future.
What ended up being an amazing gift for us all is it gave us this determination to get out and make lots of memories together.
Yeah, it changed my life, really.
So it's our mission at the Saltways that we believe all nonprofits should be able to create ethical and effective video content. And we also believe in sharing our knowledge with the sector and listening to where help is needed and where we can help provide knowledge where there is those gaps. Just before we dive in, I'm going to mention this now so I don't forget it. But if you work in the charity sector and want to develop your own video and content skills, we have our community studio, which is our online training membership for exactly that. So there's a QR code on the screen now, but we can always send a follow-up email as well. And it's an online learning platform teaching you how to film, edit and launch and review your own video content using your phones, and you get 12 months membership for £250. But right, let's crack on with the main event. So firstly, why are we doing this? Why are we having this conversation? Why have we done this research? And the starting point for us was the research from the Guardian's investigation in October 2024, which revealed that major NGOs were using AI-generated images in their fundraising and comms, and often without disclosure or with anyone really questioning it. And at the Saltways, we'd been noticing it too in conversations we were having, and also just noticing more AI images appearing on charity social media and not labelled or discussed in any way. They were kind of just kept appearing. And I kept hearing the same questions and having the same conversations with people, like, are we allowed to do this? Should we be doing this? What are the rules? And I kind of felt like there wasn't necessarily a knowledge gap, although there is, but it was like there's a lack of guidance. And I really do believe that charities are full of good people with good intentions, trying to do the right thing, and they didn't really need judgment as such. It was that I felt like they needed something practical that they could actually use. So that's what we set out to create. It's research-led guidelines shaped by the sector for the sector. We've had input from 116 charity professionals, 11 in-depth interviews, and today's session has been designed to address the questions that we kept hearing and to open up this important conversation. So I'm really, really happy and grateful to be joined by 6 amazing panelists who I feel like are like the A-team in this. They're going to be sharing their sector insight and knowledge with us all, and really trying to answer those questions that kept coming up, but in really practical ways. So first up, we've got Aseni Alan. Sorry, Aseni, if I mispronounce your surname, but Alinchev, who's a postdoctoral research fellow who's going to be talking to us about the risks of AI and the research that he has been doing.
Emma, it looks like SNE's just dropped off the call. I don't know if he's lost his signal. So you might
Oh
want
no.
person.
Okay, well, sorry, Ross, then we'll jump straight on into you to put the pressure on, and we'll come back to Aseni when he rejoins us. Oh, he's back. Sorry. Aseni, have you got signal okay? Do you want us to move on to someone else and come back to you? Are you okay to get going? You're on mute at the moment. Oh, there you go.
Yeah, I think I'm back. Sorry, the internet crashed. It happens once a day, but this is just the moment when it happened. So,
Well, over to you, and please do introduce yourself again, because I know I don't think I've probably done you justice with the level of expertise you bring.
no worries. No worries. Thank you very much. Okay. Let me just do that. Hi, good morning, good evening, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Arseni. I'm a postdoctoral fellow at the University of Antwerp, and I also hold affiliation with the University of Oxford Ethos Center for Ethics and Humanities. And my research has been centered on the use of AI-generated visuals for broadly defined global health. And today I would like to talk to you a little bit about my research funding, specifically from the angle of risks that might emerge with using AI, or not even in terms of using AI, but just like producing images in the AI era. First and foremost, when organizations use AI, one way or another, they really enter the murky waters of public mistrust, AI slop, and misinformation. You probably all remember the scandal from 2023 when Amnesty International created this campaign to depict protests in Colombia, and there was a huge backlash directed at Amnesty. I think they withdrew the campaign, which again, nonetheless, fast forward to 2025, 2026, we have major organizations kind of still playing with AI-generated images and videos. And one way or another, like as people are getting more accustomed to kind of noticing AI-generated content, that might really backfire in a sense that, people would start perceiving NGO communication, which is, technically supposed to be authentic storytelling. It should be aligned with photojournalism. But then all of a sudden, that all kind of reeks of AI slop. And I think people have been increasingly really fed up. There is like AI slop fatigue discussed in the media. And obviously misinformation, because so many actors use AI in bad faith just to really to trick people. There have been like fake fundraising campaigns. There were scams. So when NGOs or I don't know, people working in broadly defined global health, when they use AI visuals, that automatically kind of pushes, it kind of really pushes the visual practices in that like murky domain. Second thing that I want to draw your attention to is the fact that AI generated visuals, they don't exist in vacuum, right? So historically, organizations we can trace global health photography to colonial image making, and one way or another, all those images have been sucked into algorithms, and they're being reassessed, reassembled, and AI produces you statistically average results for the most models. So, and also it doesn't help that major stock image websites such as Adobe Stock or Freepik are selling those kind of horrifying racialized gendering images that just really exceed the old school abusive images, and this is like really another iteration. And you can Adobe, for instance, is selling thousands of those images, and you can buy them for $60 or euros, and embed them in your campaign. I guess some people do that. It's hard to trace. And the problem is that, that AI also learns from the images that are put online. So potentially we're creating a circle in which AI images are being trained on AI images, and that creates really a vicious self-amplifying circle. So that's why that's another point of concern. And AI is being, from my experience, is being increasingly used to kind of to really depict children or people in very miserable states of being, and that really and there is even this justification that, you know, because these people do not exist in the images, therefore norms for respectful depictions of people can be avoided. So this is again a very problematic line of justifications that is unfolding. Another thing is that not just about the amplification of biases, it could be the case that by using AI uncritically, by representing people in the communities, we might be even creating the new biases. So for instance, here you could see this interesting, I put the QR code. It was an experiment conducted by an NGO in Tanzania, where they showed some of the indigenous people the ways in which they are represented by AI. And people noticed that, yeah, this is completely disrespectful. It really misrepresents the culture, it misrepresents how people think, how they dress, and so on and so forth. Yet, I mean, the knowledge about those communities, it exists out there, and somebody prompted for it because it was kind of went viral on social media. So by using AI tools uncritically, we create conditions for, you know, to create and misrepresent people in the community. So potentially we are also creating new biases. Yeah, and please check the link for more information. It's an absolutely fascinating video. Another problem is that, and this is, it really shows that not using AI is not enough. Because again, AI learns from real images and often without consent of anyone. So this is a short, I did a very short bit of research that was picked up by The Guardian a couple of months ago. Basically, I used Google Banana, which is the most recent version of Google's generative AI, and I just put very simple generic prompts like volunteers help children in Africa. And it started not only showing me the white savers, but it started showing me images featuring logos of real organizations, such as Save the Children, Doctors Without Borders, Kenya Red Cross, and many, many others. So it could be that, you know, that the media libraries of your organizations that you are embedded into, yeah, it's already been hijacked by the corporations. Yeah, and technically, I guess they can train on your images without the consent. And this is just the fact that it really creates you the logos, the place's real logos. It's just a testimony to that process. Yeah, and in that regard, there should be somehow mechanisms to protect the media libraries. I don't know how it can be done, but also it's important to update the informed consent forms for real photography, because it could be that, you know, there is a new risk right now that, you know, the person consents to be in the image, but there is a risk that their photo, their face might be sucked into algorithms without the knowledge of NGO photographer or the person themselves. So yeah, consider updating the CV. It's my suggestion. And also the whole another discussion could be around greenwashing, because I spoke with people who told me that, you know, AI images is such a great tool because nobody needs to travel. You know, we don't need to hire local photographers, so they don't have to travel locally. We don't need to fly someone in from London, Geneva, or some other big metropolitan area. While it might be true that, you know, for if you create a campaign based on the images with AI, it's probably going to be producing less carbon emissions compared to flying someone in. But if I talk about the videos, that would be very, very problematic, because videos, they just take so much of energy, they take so much of clean water. So again, there is a risk that, you know, when organizations defend the use of AI, they structurally contribute to the greenwashing of technology that is just not just in the domain of global health NGOs, but it's happening broadly. So by endorsing that, we also greenwashing, and I think we should be transparent about that as well. Another point of concern is that you know, global health is such a polarized space, and you know, a lot of those big organizations, big companies that create those tools, they have a peculiar political agenda. Just think about Elon Musk and his Grok. You know, there's this recent scandal, which you're of course all aware of non-consensual, consensual sexualized images of women and children, transgressions on so many levels. But I would like to also show you those two images that I found on LinkedIn. They were posted by small NGOs based in the global south, and they were generated with Grok. I don't know if you, and I think on the image on the left, they kind of try to crop out the logo. Yeah, and on the right as well. So if you can just click on the image, you can see it like in full, but obviously not here. So yeah, and you know, sometimes those images are posted with the Grok watermarks, and that might, you know, signal that the NGO or whoever kind of endorses the values. You know, a lot of those corporations are just terrible by default, obviously, but I think Elon Musk's extravaganza is probably one of the worst. So yeah, there is a whole dimension that, you know, the use of AI tools might be seen as an endorsement of values, or at least the material support, right? Because we need to pay for those tools. And last point I would like to draw your attention to is that the use of AI potentially undermines the localization of photojournalistic global health photography or videography, because again, we can trace global health representation back to photography in colonial times, you know, when the missionaries, the anthropologists, the writers, they were kind of encountering the other, creating racialized and gendering hierarchies. Then, with the establishment of the global health as a distinctive field alongside international development, yeah, the photographers were sent on assignments, you know, on the parachute, which is sometimes known as parachute photography. You know, photographer flies in, usually he takes photos in a couple of days, and then he flies back without any sort of local engagement. But then, even though local photographers have been really pushing for justice in that regard for ages, only with the COVID travel restrictions, people began to be hired locally on a massive scale, specifically because NGOs couldn't fly in photographers from the global north. So in the moment of, you know, when the supposed empowerment of local photographers or videographers started, now we have the AI turn that people have to compete not only with each other, but with potentially with the generative AI. And just to give you an example, this is the image created by WHO. It was posted in 2023 on Twitter with a quite a dehumanizing caption, "When you smoke, I starve." It was generated in Midjourney. Yeah, we don't know the magnitude of the phenomenon, but it's quite clear that the organizations are testing these kind of synthetic visuals, and yeah, potentially it undermines the long-standing efforts to kind of decolonize the global health representation and give representational freedom to local creators. Yeah, thank you very much.
Thanks so much, Arseny. And I think that just really helps give it all a bit of context. And I wanted to include that at the beginning, because I think there is, you know, there are risks for all charities, and you can't ignore that the AI generated images are there, and it is something that you can't just, yeah, you can't put your head in the sand. Like, there's risks for all organizations. So thank you so much for that. Now we're going to go on to Ross from Ross, you're going to have to say it, because for some reason I can't get that into my head. Can you say it, please, Ross?
Innovatable.
Yeah, innovatable. Sorry, my brain's not working properly today. Yeah, I'll hand over to you, Ross, who's going to be talking about AI from his context.
Thank you very much, Emma. Appreciate it. Yeah, thanks everyone. And it's really interesting hearing Arseny's perspective, because there are going to be threads that we just heard running through what I talk about as well. So when Emma asked me to talk, I thought, how on earth do I squeeze this into 5 minutes, which is what I have with you. So I'll do it in about three seconds, I think. So why does AI reproduce biases and stereotypes? And the reason is because of its training data. So here we go, job done. Let's dive into it a bit more. So I think it's quite interesting to understand how we got to this point. And so the question of how were AI tools trained, I think, is a good place to start. So I have really condensed this down. I found myself deep into a video talking about the physics and the formulas behind image generation. At one point, I thought, Ross, you're in way too deep here, step back. So machine learning, to keep it brief and within my 5 minutes, is the method of showing hundreds, thousands, millions, and actually billions of examples of something to an AI tool, initially with labels, and the tool learns to categorize them. And eventually you get to the point where this tool is able to categorize and label the images themselves based on what it believes to be the most relevant label. And I've included this lovely picture of a toddler because that is very much like how we learn too. And I think if we take that one step further, this training can actually end up reflecting societal values, much as Arsene shared. And how do you label something objectively for subjective things? So just thinking about it coming into this, I was thinking of the labels. How do you label something rich, poor, healthy, unhealthy? That's really hard to actually objectively say this should be labeled as that. So very simply, showing the labels of things and learns to categorize. So I think this is quite interesting. We've gone from a point in a couple of years where at one point with the work that I did, I offered a guide to some things to look out for to spot if an image was AI generated. We're at the point now where it's incredibly difficult for most images to truly be able to discern by eye. And so the question is, how do we get to there? And this is, again, a very quick version of how these tools are trained. And it's interesting to see the two elements. During the early training, the tools were given images and trained to create noise until the image was, as you can see, the far right, totally unrepresentable of what it started with. And because it was able to repeat that over and over again with millions of images, etc., it then was taught how to denoise those images back into an image that makes sense to us as humans. So that is actually how it's working, how it's trained. It has all of these images that it's categorized effectively. It's learned how to destroy them with noise. So then it's also learned how to create them with noise. So that's what it does and how it does it. So what images was it actually trained on? I'm going to share one example of a model called Stable Diffusion, and it looks like it was trained on over 2.3 billion images. That's a lot of images. There are some researchers that took a deeper dive into what some of those images would be, and they were able to look at, using a tool, they were able to look at 12 million of them and actually break them down into understanding 12 million of this subsection. Of those 12 million, they found that 47% came from only 100 domains, only 100 websites, which I thought was really interesting. The almost half came from 100 places of 12 million images. 1 million of those were scraped from Pinterest. And the others included things like user-generated photos, art. There were websites like Flickr were represented in this. We've also got shopping sites. We've got stock image sites, as Arsene mentioned. And it's just a mind-boggling amount of images that this was trained on. And then we get to the dark side. It was discovered that approximately 2.9% of this data set featured not safe for work content. And that's just this data set. So it could be more representative in other ways. And I will touch on some of the ramifications of that in a moment. So we hear that and we ask ourselves the question, what could go wrong? And I think it'll be touched on in many different ways. It's touched on in the guides that Emma's put together. But we've got harmful social stereotypes being broadcast back to us. We've got deep fakes, which are obviously a challenge for lots of reasons, especially now that they are so believable. We've got biases that are being amplified, as we've heard already. And then I think this one is such a challenging one, but it's really insidious. So this screenshot here is a response to a LinkedIn post that I put out. And this, for context, this person had shared that they'd noticed an image of themselves being used for a conference featured more cleavage and a lower cut top than the image that they had submitted to the conference. They get down to the bottom of it and it was accidental. A designer had changed the scale of the image and filled the image, but the tool had insidiously changed that to a slightly more sexualized image and not the one that the woman had intended. So you can see exactly how that can just send us down a slippery slope. So let's take a look at that again, and Arsene's covered this nicely, so I won't pause on here for too long, but you can see very quickly, this took me no time at all. I can generate 4 images that just perpetuate these stereotypes. And in the same way, we can see it perpetuated in different myths that we have. So what does a UK charity board member look like? This, apparently. So I've gone over my time. I'll wrap us up by saying that AI images don't just reflect bias. They actually provide the raw materials for those bad actors that want to industrial scale manufacture biases and actually, as Arsene touched on, create new biases. So that's it for me. I want to say thank you. I also want to say that most of my presentations aren't as depressing as this, so apologies for that. But back to you, Emma.
Thanks, Ross. And you haven't given yourself a plug there, but you do really great training around this. So yeah, please do check out Ross on LinkedIn and follow him. And I think that was one of the biggest issues we found is that in our research is that a lot of charities and generally people just don't understand how AI image generation actually works. So thank you for kind of breaking that down. Because I think if more people understood how it even operates and how images are generated, they would be less inclined to use it. So thank you, Ross. We're now going to move on to Anna from Design Bench Studio, who's going to talk about how they use AI and the way that they've kind of been a bit clever with their approach to it.
Hi, everyone. Oh, can you see my screen?
Yeah.
Okay, great. I can't see my own screen. Welcome, everyone. Let's see if I can change this. My name is Anna. I run Design Bench Studio. We are a creative practice based in South London. We work with charities and tech for good founders, arts and culture organizations, and we have been working with AI created images since 2024. Part of the studio practice is branding, and part of the studio practice is image making and image creation. So I will be taking you through a few things that we've learned since starting to work with artificial content, mainly for specific brands, but also for social media assets and websites. So if you give me a second, I can't see what you see. Hold on. Let's try that again. Excellent. So we have created a bunch of images for loads and loads of different use cases. So can you see this split? Yeah, okay, great. So we usually tend to work with specific requests from clients who ask for AI generated images in order to cut costs, or in order to create things that haven't existed yet, or things that aren't readily available on stock, or other types of free resources. So in general, the creative industry has been revolutionized by this specific use case of creation of images at such a rapid scale. And at the beginning, it was a free-for-all, and it was the Wild West, and everyone was creating anything that they could get, any tool that they could get their hands on. And so it was a long time in terms of how technology works for this to settle, and for real conversations to have place in the creative industries about the correct use of images. And in our opinion at the studio, in this huge era of anyone can create anything, actually the difference between a good designer and a tool-bound one is the quality of the writing of the prompts, and is the quality of the thinking and arranging the thinking ahead of the creation of anything. So instead of starting with existing things, we have to start within ourselves and understand what we are trying to generate. So for designers, this is specifically hard because we have a brief from other people telling us what to create. But I think it is the designer's responsibility, just like Ross was mentioning earlier, to check that that new image that was generated by the AI isn't tainted with any sort of specific biases or is overly sexualized or anything like that. So what Ross was mentioning is a designer's nightmare of not having checked the image before it went onto the presentation. So that is, as much as it is the AI's fault, it is also human error for not being able to identify what those biases were before sharing anything publicly. So the creative industries is crazy about AI at the moment. And there's so many articles at the forefront of this and so many conferences, specifically with Adobe, really, really pushing these tools onto designers, but not teaching them how to use them properly or ethically. So art direction, so image creation is a skill set that humans have. It's not a skill set that the tools have. So before we go onto tools, we need to check that we know what we're doing. So for non-designers, this basically means that there is an additional learning curve of what are we creating before we start prompting. So what do we do in the creative industries to make sure that everything that we create artificially is tagged properly and it is actually specified which model was used, just like the previous two speakers have showed us, like where the images come from, what has been created. And specifically now, people are starting to ask for what is the prompt that led you to creating that image. And that is now part of the design output and the design. So we will share the prompts of what was created, just to make sure that the client also understands what was needed to create that specific image. So these are the three things that non-designers can start to do themselves. So please tag your images wherever you put them, even if it's half created by AI and half edited by yourself. Always good to say where that came from and what model was used. So these are just kind of non-designer touch points. And here is a case study that is useful for me to share from the studio. This is a real life project where all of the images have been created with the use of AI. This is an AI product. So it was necessary to create images with the AI and specifically tag them that this is created by that. So Kira is a platform that teaches and educates young investors and young people how to be financially literate. And it also helps institutions to collect more and more interested investors as part of a younger generation of Gen Z people coming into financial education. So how did we art direct these images? How am I doing on time, Emma? Good, okay. So how to actually art direct artificially. This was a major learning curve for the studio as well as for the client, because we needed to be very, very careful what kind of people we were creating for these specific poster images and hero images. So we followed a 3-step process for this. And I think even as a non-designer, these should be really, really carefully looked at. So the 3-step process for creating images is gathering actual real imagery from real places where the people have consented to their image being taken and the photographers have been paid for that specific job. So we understand what is available for use before we even think about generating anything ourselves. We need to make sure that the sources, that how we're teaching the AI makes sense for the project itself. Then we need to arrange some thinking. So thinking about how do we use words to describe what we are trying to output with the help of the description that we have already created with another AI tool. And then I'll take you through these steps in a bit more detail later. And then learning the prompt language itself. So that learning the prompt language, that is something everyone can do. And as designers, we highly recommend that everyone in the world starts to understand how to prompt. Before you even start prompting, you can experiment with prompts and see what the outputs are, but actually understanding your tools is also as important. So before anything happens in the design world, there's always going to be a collation and a generation of mood boards. These mood boards are images that have been specifically selected for those projects and for those brands. So post strategic outputs and strategic considerations and insights about the type of people who will be seeing these images, the kind of brand identity, the mission, the core values of that. How do we extract and find images that already exist in the world ourselves, rather than getting the AI to find it for us, that will resonate with this specific brand? So how to break down what images need to be created is almost as important as what we create. So for that, totally, you can still use AI tools to describe images for us. So ideally, you would find something that is real, a reference image, and then ask the AI model for observable visual traits of that specific image. So instead of having the any sort of non-related kind of just felt aspects of the image, ask the AI to eliminate assumptions for you. So you can get the tool to help you eliminate your assumptions. So this image was created by a photographer for a campaign that matched the visuals of the existing brand of Kira. So you can see here what a non-biased prompt might look like, might be. Then the next thing is to arrange the thinking around it. So once you have your result, once you have a descriptor, check that the descriptor actually makes sense and check that it is not biased. And then in the arranging of the thinking, you have to ask yourself as the person creating the image, is this representation intentional? Am I describing, not stereotyping? Does this expand representation? So knowing what the audience is, you have to arrange the thinking before prompting anything. So I hope this makes sense this way. And then you get to experiment, and then you get to have all of the output. So once you have the prompt and you understand that you have checked all your biases, that you have checked that this matches the brand, you may have also checked with the client to say, hey, am I in the right sector here? Am I doing the right things? Then you can experiment with prompts and see what the outputs are, and then always check the outputs to make sure that it is representational. So for this specific one, we needed to have a whole section of what is the target audience? Are they based in the US? Are they based in Europe? Are they smiling? Are they a Black male Gen Z student with red curls, long sleeve white sweater? So you need to actually describe everything in the image before you can make a decision as to which images to use. So ideally, you would have these insights beforehand. So here's the 3-step process. Understanding the language of prompting and understanding the language of art direction will help. You don't have to understand it, but as designers, these are good prompts to start to think about. Is it a close-up of a person? Is it a full-length shot of a person? Are they looking up? Are they looking down? Are they smiling? What color is their skin tone? What visible features can I describe that won't be biased? And then learning the tools. For example, this prompt was created in Midjourney, and this was created in Midjourney circa 2024. So this is already outdated. So you can see the version, that's the version 5, and the style category was 50. But the depth at which this has been explained to the AI to create something goes kind of far beyond what people would normally think of prompting. So you have multi-angle shots, you have surreal portraits, you have symmetrical compositions, you have soft lighting. So understanding some of that language is really important when creating for specific use cases. And we totally got it wrong a bunch of times when we were doing images for this. We got the not fully representational target audience, and then we were looking at, like, because this is a digital product, it had to include phones, but actually we didn't check that everyone can hold a phone the same way. So just showing you here that you can actually get it wrong even if you do all of this work and this additional work. So just make sure that you do all of those things if you can. Thank you so much. You can connect with me on here.
Thanks, Anna. I think it's really helpful to have some real practical, tangible tips of how if you are using AI to generate images, how you can do it in a more responsible way, which is what we've included in our guidelines as well. So thank you for doing that in such detail. Now I'm going to hand over to Lara from the Business Disability Forum, who's going to be talking to us about the image bank that they created.
Thanks, Emma. You see the slides fine there? Yeah. Great. Yeah, I'm Lara. I'm from Business Disability Forum. We're a business membership organisation that works in disability inclusion. So we have businesses of all sizes from all around the world, all industries and sectors who are members, but we also work with disabled people and government to remove barriers for disabled people. I'm going to talk to you a bit today about why we created Disability Smart Image Bank, so real images, not AI images, and why we've currently got a no to AI stance in relation to images that portray disabled people. doesn't seem to want to move on. Hang on, sorry. So in terms of disability, 1 in 4 people in the UK have a disability, and across the globe, that's 1.3 billion people. But often disabled people are just not represented in the images that we see, so in the media and the marketing, or they are shown where the communication is about disability, but not just included as kind of general imagery alongside, say, media stories or marketing imagery. So I've worked in Marcoms over 30 years now, and I've always been frustrated by not being able to find images that kind of portray diverse disabilities, and also just by the lack of the realistic imagery available in most image libraries. There are some notable exceptions. So Getty has a disability collection that's pretty good, but broadly, when you look in image libraries, for example, if you do a search for a disabled person, you'll get pages and pages of models who are sitting in a wheelchair. And I say sitting in a wheelchair because they're often not disabled models. And the same is in search engines in terms of Google, Bing, etc., just the same. We did some research ourselves with Mori, and we also did some research with our members. And we basically found that there's a real lack of authentic images showing diversity within disability, or that represent disabled people realistically, so doing everyday things that everybody else does. I've already said they're often missing from marketing, media and advertising. And the disproportionate focus on wheelchair users is really quite frustrating, because actually in the UK, only about 10% of the disabled community use a wheelchair. So it's really not representing the imagery of the real disabled community. And there's also very low representation of people with less visible disabilities. Although 80% of disabled people have less visible disabilities, obviously that presents a challenge, I'm sure Anna would agree, in terms of how do you represent in images someone with a less visible disability? Well, I'll come on and tell you how we did that in a minute. And then lastly, where disability or disabled people are represented, they're often shown on their own, being looked after or helped by other people, or in kind of inspirational images. So, for example, Paralympians or superhuman. And one of the individuals we spoke to as part of our research said exactly that. So we see extremes. Disability is terrible. Disability is a superpower. We don't see the in-between of disability is normal. So our campaign, which we call Changing the Image of Disability, is all about authenticity and realism. Now, I realise we're in the lucky position of having the budget to be able to create our own image bank, but it's broader than just an image bank. It's a campaign too, and authenticity and realism really does underpin all the aims of the campaign. So we basically want to increase representation of disabled people in imagery, to improve public business and media perceptions of disability, and really importantly, to increase the awareness of the diversity of disabled people. So disabled people are just as diverse as the rest of the population by age, ethnicity, appearance, brightly coloured hairs, tattoos, piercings, etc. But when you look in image banks or in images that are out there, that's often not what you see. And lastly, to create a much more authentic and realistic view of disability. So just going back to what our respondents said in the research, disability is normal. Disabled people have families, friends, jobs, leisure pursuits, do dangerous things, go out late at night, etc. So we worked together with disabled people and created our image bank, which we call the Disability Smart Image Bank. It currently has over 750 images in it, and it is a business membership benefit for the businesses that are members of us. But we also have selected 75 of the images, and we provide them free to journalists and picture editors, because we want to make sure that stories, not just stories about disability, but stories that are seen in the media, have good, authentic, real images with them. To date, I think over 10,000 images have been downloaded from our image bank. In terms of creating it, we cast disabled models, paid disabled models. We did use some volunteers, and we co-created all the shots with them. So When I mentioned earlier about less visible disabilities, we had a number of models who had less visible disabilities, some with more than one disability, and we didn't bring any props or anything to the shoots. We co-created the shoots with them and said, what barriers do you experience? What things and aids do you use in your everyday life? Bring those with you to the shoots and we'll incorporate those into the images. So just as a few examples, quiet zone signs, we dimmed lighting, people are pictured wearing sound cancelling headphones, sunflower lanyards, which are often used for people who have less visible disabilities, and medical aids that people might use if they have long-term conditions. So a desk with maybe a glucose monitor sitting on it, an EpiPen on a table in a pub in front of friends, pill dispensers, dyslexic models with coloured overlays over their work showing that they might use those for that. And really importantly, disability is mainly incidental in our images, not the focal point of the images. And I'm just going to talk you through a couple. We've got lots of images, but just a few here. So top left here, you'll see a woman who is of short stature and she has a facial difference and she's working in an airport check-in desk. At bottom left, you'll see two friends who are shopping in a shopping centre, and the person on the left is looking closely at a shopping centre map because she has visual impairment. She's wearing glasses. Bottom middle, you'll see somebody sitting at a desk, or it could be a table anywhere, and she is using an EpiPen. And then actually that might not be an EpiPen, because I don't think you use an EpiPen in your stomach. I may have misquoted that. The one at the top middle is two colleagues working together at a desk in an office environment. The person on the right has a visual impairment and he has got an eye patch over one eye. We've also, as part of the campaign, produced some free guidance about how you can select, commission and use images in a disability smart way. So how you can make sure your images are realistic, authentic, inclusive. And then there's a much shorter sort of quick read, 10 principles of disability smart imagery. And I'll share the link for where you can get that at the end. So our position on AI imagery at the moment is as follows. So we don't use AI for creating images of anything at all. We only use real, authentic images of disabled people, real disabled people who have the disability or condition they're portraying. We have a license agreement for our image bank for businesses and for media to use, which say that you cannot alter the images at all. And we remain concerned, as others have said already in previous presentations, that AI perpetuates bias and stereotypes about disability. However, AI is here. We see the real benefit of teaching LLMs, so we're pragmatic. We really want businesses and the media to maximise the use of our images and any other real images that portray disabled people to support LLMs learning well. We had a conference recently where Jenny Leigh Flurry, who's the Chief Accessibility Officer at Microsoft, said that they were absolutely committed to getting disability representation right in their AI generating tools by ensuring that data sets are categorised correctly. And the way that they've been doing this is to form partnerships with mainly charities working in specific spaces to really involve disabled people in looking at the data sets and the tagging and everything. And so there's some quite interesting stuff on Microsoft if you wanted to see that. And then we also, as has already been talked about, improving prompts. We see the value of helping AI users to improve their prompts around disability, to sense check the images that are created with the communities that are portrayed, and then always make it clear when an image is AI generated. So I did a couple of simple prompts here. Copilot and ChatGPT, create me an image of a disabled person. Now, as Anna's already said, very short, very simple prompts are probably not going to give you necessarily what you want, but it just really proves our point, the same as looking on image banks or on Google searches, that you'll receive two pretty generic images, both of sort of young-ish, 30 to 40-ish men using wheelchairs sitting in a park. When I asked a slightly more complex prompt of ChatGPT, create me an image of a disabled university student who has a limb difference enjoying a night out with their friends. They have brightly coloured hair and tattoos. This is the image that was returned. It's worth saying that the more we train LLMs to portray disability correctly, we hope there'll be a less need for such complex prompts. So in a really ideal world, and maybe I'm being far too idealistic here, the more we normalise disability, then the less we'll have to ask AI to create images of disabled people. So in this instance, I might not have asked for a disabled person to be within the prompt, but AI puts a disabled person there because a disabled student in a university enjoying a night out with her friends is a completely normal thing to see. In the future, so we'll always aim to choose real images over AI. If we decide to create AI generated images, we'll, following the guidelines that Emma has so brilliantly put together, do so responsibly and ethically, check our prompts and images for bias, seek input from relevant communities, and always mark our images as AI generated. Lastly, this is where you can get hold of images. This is where you can get hold of more information about the Changing the Image of Disability campaign, and also access those free resources. And if you want to contact me directly, my email address is there. I believe these decks are going to be shared afterwards, are they, Emma? Or the recording? Yeah. Do feel free to contact me if you want more information. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Lara. I love the work that you do and the image bank. And I think it does open up that question, which is something I keep grappling with, is whether actually we should take on as a sector to actually be training AI a bit more with more non-biased images. So that's a whole other thing that maybe we can talk about a little bit at the end. But for now, I'm going to introduce Laura Stanley from Charity Digital, who's going to be talking to us a bit more about sort of our obligations as a sector around AI generated images.
Thank you. Let me just share my screen. Oop, bear with me. There we go. Thank you. Thank you so much. My name's Laura. I'm a senior content writer at Charity Digital. And just as a really quick introduction to Charity Digital, we are a registered charity with the mission of helping organizations of all sizes harness the power of digital through our content and through training resources. We are running a conscious AI campaign this year to talk about what responsible use looks like for charities. And today I'm talking about the sector's obligations and trust crisis. So let's start by saying that charities have an almost uniquely trusted voice in society. The 2025 Public Trust in Charities report conducted by the Charity Commission showed that charities are highly ranked in terms of trust, appearing higher than every professional institution with the exception of doctors. But this is also a really high position to fall from when we think about AI. Trust drives everything we do. How trusted we are corresponds directly to our ability to fundraise, to raise awareness of as an authority on our causes, and to deliver services. People donate because they believe in a cause, they feel connected to it, and they trust that their money will be used responsibly to impact that cause. But AI poses a real challenge to that trust. AI is leading to real doubt in what people are seeing online. I mean, we've talked about this a lot already today, but doubt, it undermines our authority as charities. Research from Getty Images shows that more than three quarters of people say it's getting to the point where they can't tell if an image is online is real or not. You might remember this picture of the Pope in a puffer jacket that went viral in 2023. It fooled a lot of people, and it wasn't hard at the time. It was before the proliferation of sort of AI slop on social media. Our skepticism wasn't quite as well honed, but even now, when it is really well honed, it takes effort to spot AI imagery in the wild. There are telltale signs, but you have to really look for them. And AI imagery is only increasing in volume. So we've got the President of the United States sharing AI videos of himself celebrating with the USA hockey win. This was only this week at after the Winter Olympics. And if that's the sort of content we're seeing come out of authority figures, including actual heads of state, it's sort of understandable that we're living in a much more doubtful world. The same research from Getty Images shows that 98% of people believe that authentic images and videos are pivotal in establishing trust, and 9 in 10 people want to know whether an image has been created using AI. That appetite for disclosure is evident, but if UK regulation hasn't quite kept up, but the EU has. While there is no regulatory requirement in the UK for organisations to disclose if an image is generated by AI, organisations processing EU data are required to disclose this as part of the EU AI Act. The EU AI Act, which came into force in February last year, states that deployers of an AI system that generates or manipulates image, audio, or video content constituting a deepfake shall disclose that the content has been artificially generated or manipulated. It essentially applies to anything that is generated or manipulated with the purpose of informing the public on matters of public interest, anything that could, and it could be misleading. So there's a list here, the deepfake audio and video, synthetic images, content that impersonates people, and AI generated public interest content. Transparency requirements under this EU legislation have 4 core components. So that's traceability, and that's the ability to track and reconstruct AI outputs back to their sources and input data. Explainability, providing clear, comprehensible reasons for AI-generated outcomes. Interpretability, ensuring humans can discern the logic underpinning AI decisions. And disclosure, informing affected persons before their first interaction with AI systems. The requirements are determined by really quite confusing risk categories, with most of the regulation applying to high-risk categories. Interestingly, limited risk AI systems, in which chatbots and deepfakes are given as examples, are subject to what is considered lighter transparency obligations. So developers and deployers must ensure that end users are aware that they're interacting with AI. Failure to comply with these regulations can result in fines, which may be faced by organisations outside the EU if their systems impact EU users. And at the time of writing this presentation, we couldn't find any examples of fines being incurred, despite sort of the daily challenges we are facing deciphering AI content. And also, I've never seen a disclosure statement in the wild yet. And as I said, the UK itself doesn't have an equivalent transparency requirement in law, but there are other regulations that may apply to the use of AI-generated imagery. There's the risk that AI-generated imagery violates anti-discrimination provisions in media regulation, something that's highlighted in the Saltways report. The AI-generated imagery has been reported to perpetuate racial and gender stereotypes, as we've all discussed. One commonly cited study found that images generated by AI to show people in high-paying jobs were more likely to feature subjects with lighter skin tones, while people in low-paying roles were more likely to be depicted with darker skin tones. Using imagery that perpetuates those harmful stereotypes, however unintentionally, could constitute discriminatory treatment under legislatory frameworks, including the UK Equality Act, the Ofcom Broadcasting Code, and the EU Audiovisual Media Services Directive. However, while it is possible, without a precedent and without AI-specific legislation in place in the UK, much of the transparency efforts have been left up to organisations to decide on their own. The Advertising Standards Authority has produced its own guidance in the absence of any regulatory change, and in doing so, it sort of acknowledges how AI-generated content changes the way we communicate and interact with each other, particularly on an organisational level. The ASA suggests that organisations ask themselves 2 questions when considering whether or not they should disclose the use of AI. So, is the audience likely to be misled? If the use of AI is not disclosed, what's the harm? What is the harm that the disclosure is trying to stop? And is there a danger of if there is a danger of the audience being misled, is the disclosure clarifying the ad's message or contradicting it? And again, this is not a legislatory requirement. I think in the absence of legislation, or at least powerful legislation, the EU AI Act has been in place since last year, and very few of us know about anything about it. I think charities are in a position to lead by example on transparency and how they use AI-generated content, indeed whether they choose to do so at all, given its risks. We need to consider why transparency is so important to our audiences and what impact using AI-generated images may have on them. I think that trust and transparency for charities around AI has sort of 2 levels. On one hand, there are lots of tangible risks to using AI images that we've talked about a lot already: bias, stereotyping, plagiarism, the environmental impact, and much more. And we need to acknowledge that many in our audience are likewise very aware of those risks. It follows that if we use AI images, it will have some sort of reputational impact and that it will affect the trust that our stakeholders have in us. But on another, perhaps a little bit less quantifiable level, there's also the way that AI affects how we talk about impact and how it's understood by our audiences. Charities are heavily scrutinized as organizations existing for the public good, and we are trusted to be responsible. So philanthropic impact is the most researched element of a charity's operations before a donation. If images of that impact are found to be AI generated without explanation, it calls into question that impact itself. We saw this example earlier, but yeah, Amnesty International was criticized for posting AI generated images. And while the intention was to raise awareness of the police brutality in the region and the need for reform, the use of AI was seen to undermine that. And we also need to reflect on the wider context. So AI generated imagery is everywhere, and it calls into question every picture we see and every video. When this video of a tiny deer playing with a rhino at a zoo in Poland surfaced early this year, many of the comments were calling it AI. I spent ages trying to work it out. And it was real, but what was meant to be a heartwarming moment of unlikely friendship was sort of marred by cynicism, and it was sort of caused by this proliferation of imagery online that isn't like, it's not always easy to spot the AI. And similarly, we need to think about the purposes of the images we use. Are we using AI to generate empathy? Are those two purposes compatible? Is AI imagery not a facsimile of the human experience? It lacks the authenticity that typically drives charity communications. And what are we asking AI to generate? Charities are already striking a really delicate balance between engendering support for their cause and avoiding the promotion of deficit narratives, depicting service users as helpless and reducing people to the most vulnerable experiences. And given the propensity for AI to perpetuate bias and stereotypes due to the bias and stereotypes the data it's trained on, existing in the data it's trained on, it's difficult for AI generated imagery to sensitively reflect the work that charities do and the communities they serve. And disclosure alone doesn't mitigate those risks. As the ASA points out, if the claim is misleading and it's augmented by AI imagery, disclosing that that imagery is made with AI doesn't negate the claim itself. And furthermore, one final point to note, which we've again already talked about quite a lot, we don't know the origins of AI generated imagery. Stock photos feature actors who have consented for their image to be used in this way. And even then, there are licensing agreements that don't allow stock imagery to be used for vouching for products, for example, instead deemed for editorial use only. With AI generated imagery, we don't have that kind of oversight. And so, yeah, in summary, charities need to very carefully consider the implications that AI generated imagery has on our ability to engender trust. Failure to disclose AI use undermines the trust that we've worked really hard as a sector to earn. It risks perpetuating harmful stereotypes. It communicates a level of risk that we're comfortable with, for example, environmental impacts. And it doesn't reflect our real world impact. In fact, it could call it into question. So if we want to remain authorities on our cause and foster the trust that powers our ability to fundraise and deliver services, then we need to really carefully consider how we use AI. Thank you very much. I've also put a link to the Charity Digital Conscious AI Hub in there as well, because I think we've got a lot more content on how to use AI responsibly there. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Laura. And I think that just goes back to even what we were talking about at the beginning, that charities can't ignore this, and like there are risks involved. There's legal obligations and there's risks, which leads me very nicely on to introducing Ian McLintock from Charity Excellence, who basically, yeah, when I chatted with you, Ian, you kind of just said that to me. Charities can't bury their heads in the sand about this. And so I'm going to pass over to you, Ian, but also just to flag, if you haven't looked at the resources on Charity Excellence, please do, because it's jam-packed with free resources for charities. So yeah, I'll pass on to you, Ian.
And if you want to ignore all my AI stuff, you can just do that. We've got 36 free imagery libraries, so you might as well go and just get the real stuff. However, we've had from a lot of experts, now you've got the hand grenade rolling into the room. I'm Ian, I'm on the autism spectrum. I open my mouth to change feet. I am not a comms professional. I built the charity sector's first free AI system in 2022. I've built loads more. I built Agentic. I'm not a techie. And I designed the first AI ethics and governance framework in 2023. I have just upgraded it. My interest is ethics across the piece. So I'm interested in things like bias and environment, not simply focusing in on this. And I am ruthlessly pragmatic. I live in the front line in the trenches with the charities. My total annual budget is £80,000, including my full-time salary. I work 7 days a week. We've 3 times as many members as NCVO. We need to get stuff done, but we need to get stuff done without really screwing up and ending on the front page of the Daily Mail. So this is not about individual charities getting this stuff right. It's about making sure that none of us appear on the front page of the Daily Mail, because once a few of us have been on the front page of the Daily Mail, they're going to lose trust in all of us, and we can't afford to do that. So Socrates, I'm not remotely like Socrates. I'm not remotely clever. Our approach at Charity Excellence is we think you know how to run your charity a damn sight better than we do. So there's no way that we're going to tell you what to do, but what we do instead is we try to make you think about things in a different way, and we give you frameworks and processes that you can adapt and use for yourself. So we're just trying to make things easy for you. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to just show you, I hear a lot of conversations down in the trenches about this being black and white. Don't use AI. It's unethical. Said, don't do that. This, that. No, it's more complex than that. So let's start by being provocative. This issue around AI and all the problems with AI, etc. It's new. It's absolutely nothing of the kind. All of the issues about art and authenticity and everything all happened in the 80s with digital, and they had the same conversations with photography. There are real issues, but this isn't new. It's unethical. So's cropping photos. We've been doing it for years. Politicians do it all the time. It's harmful. Yeah, well, poverty porn's harmful. Poverty porn isn't AI. It's just nasty. Photoshopping, unrealistic images, impacting how young people see themselves. That's harmful. It's not authentic, neither stock imagery. Well, it's copyrighted. Well, no, actually, it isn't all copyrighted, and it's not copied stuff. It's called memorization, and what the AI companies tell you they're not copying, it's not true, but equally, it's not exact copying either. There are companies licensing this use all the time. We're seeing more uses of synthetic data. Does that mean that they're being all ethical and not blagging and stealing stuff? No, of course it doesn't. They are, but it's not completely black and white. Plagiarism. Do remember that being influenced is not the same as being plagiaristic. So the famous painter who has a student who then paints in the style of this great painter is not plagiarism. He is influenced by the style of Picasso or whoever else. And then this argument that it's not art. Okay, what is art? And what we've seen with photography and digital is what the artists did is they redefined creativity. So initially, nobody was allowed to use digital. That was terrible stuff. And then some people did, and then everybody went, oh, wait a minute, it's a new medium. Oh, yeah, that's all right. So it is art or it's not art. And fuzzy logic. I'm a sad man. I talk about these kind of things. If that thing is painted by a 100% human being, it's art. If it's 99% a human being and 1% AI, it's still art. Okay? What about 85? What about 63? What about 15? At what point does it become not art? And so there's a whole series of things, and most people in most charities have the whole damn lot thrown at them, and they need to judge this, and we need to find ways to help them to think their way through this to solutions that work for them. And it's a hell of a thing to do. So, Anna, put your hands over your eyes because we're just about to go into this. This, if anyone thinks that this kind of stuff is new, this is 1925. It's the Rhinelander divorce case. And if you're thinking misogyny is new, there you go. It certainly is not. This is fake news. It's not new. But generative AI is different. It is not exactly the same as digital or photography. There is unique things about AI that we do really need to think about. This bit about blaming big tech and regulation and stuff, some of the ICO, some of the data protection regulations, pretty good for AI. Apart from that, there is very little out there. Everyone is desperate to get the economy running across the world. The Chinese can't afford to let the Americans get ahead of them. The Americans can't afford to let the AI bring this in. Microsoft are going to do this. I wouldn't hold my breath in terms of legislation or regulation that's going to keep people safe. But what you do about AI and how you do that is entirely up to you. You can't say it's someone else's job. And even if it is, if that young person or that woman is hurt by a deep fake, and we could have prevented that by giving them some good, effective guidance, and we chose not to, I think that's wrong. I think we have a responsibility to ourselves and to our communities and to other people in the sector to do what we need to do to keep it safe for all of us. I have been banging on about AI deepfakes for 2 years. And the first time I did a video on it, I had 8 people turned up. It is now the most popular course we've got. Grok did us all a favour, because right up until we got to Grok, nobody was interested in talking about deepfakes. And then when Elon went and did that, yeah, and it was bloody horrible. But actually, people are now going, wait a minute, this is a real issue. And Grok is nothing. A lot of the children's deepfakes, you're talking Cat A abusive materials. You're talking really, really vile stuff. But there is no one single correct answer. And there is no one answer that's right for everyone. What the ethics are for your organization depend on your organization. So if your artists are all creatives and they absolutely, totally hate AI, then kind of you're going to be a bit stuck with it. But if the artists in your community see it as an exciting new medium and they're really going to explore it, then for your charity, AI isn't such a big deal. But what really, really, really matters is, please, people mustn't go about saying, this, we're not going to use AI. I have had a chief executive tell me that he is not going to use AI in his charity because it makes people lazy. And I went, mate, in a desperately overworked charity sector, what's wrong with that? And he went, yeah, that's a point. But I get people saying, that's it, no AI, we've nothing to do with it. We don't want to know anything about that. If you're ignorant, you pinned a target on the back of your charity, because AI is in everything. No, it's not. I haven't seen AI in a fridge yet, but it's in pretty much everything else, and that's going to be normal. And your suppliers and your designers, they will be using AI. And if nobody else is using AI, trust me, the deep fakes and the scammers are using AI. We must make sure that our people are ready and able to fight back against this. So when you've got your volunteer from the school uploading the picture of Susie Smith, she's the top goal scorer in year 7 of St. Joseph's Primary School in Aston Clinton, and here she is pictured with her mum Sue at the football competition, and you upload that, and that's uploaded in high def. And the privacy settings are all set open. That's really scary. We need to get these kind of ethical messages out to people. And what we don't understand is the goalposts have moved. What was okay before is not okay now. And some of them, we're not actually quite sure where they've gone. And most people don't know they've moved. And what do I mean about that? I mean, there are new ways of thinking and doing. And so what I've seen some people doing is, I often worked in areas like highly vulnerable people and domestic abuse and stuff like that. And we could never really use imagery except in very clever ways, because we couldn't put our people out there on social media. And what some people are now doing is using hyper-realistic cartoons. So it's really obvious that this is not meant to be a real person, but it enables them to show and get messages over in a way that they could not do so before. But there's a new problem arriving. So I say, I would like you to create a picture of a bloke from West Africa. And he's wearing a kilt. And it's a Maasai kilt. And the Maasai are East African. And you go, well, that's not that big a deal, is it, really? Yeah, okay. You try putting a kilt on a Scottish kilt on a Welshman and see who's first queuing up to hit you, the Welsh or the Scots. And so when we do this kind of thing, if we're going to use that hyper realistic and we're going to use that AI, suddenly things like accuracy around faith, cultural sensitivity become really, really, really important in a way that they were not before. And therefore, that goalpost is moved. Does everyone know that yet? Yeah. And oh yeah, and tagging AI imagery, you mentioned it. I use it all the time. I very rarely tag it. We have a very detailed ethics policy. That policy I adhere to religiously. My AI is generally pictured bunny rabbits. I had Minnie Ding the bunny wearing a kilt, celebrating wildly on the football field as the things came over and the Scottish flags were there. And that was Scotland absolutely thrashing the bloody English in the final of the Euros. If anyone believes that's real, writing its AI on it is not going to help them. So when I use imagery, if it's screamingly obviously not correct, like Bunny Nater 2, who's wearing a leather jacket and carrying a shotgun and sitting on a motorbike, if you think that's a real bunny, yeah. So the goalposts have moved. What are we going to do? And this is from our training course. And the training course is primarily designed for management. I have a QR code at the end that will take you through. I have got training courses on deep fakes and misinformation. This one is AI for boards and management. And we believe that if you are the board of any charity, you need to think about ethics. It is the moral compass that sets the governance. And when you think about the ethics, you must drill that down into the governance systems so the things that you're talking about actually consistently get done at the workface. And the AI governance framework does that for you, and you just go through and you take what you want. So the first thing is your legal objects. Everybody hates me for this. You probably will as well. There is a legal obligation to act exclusively in the best interests of your organization and nothing else. You are entitled to have your own opinions. You are not entitled to impose them on your charity, and your charity is not entitled to impose them on other people. So if your charity is environmental and you feel really, really strongly about creativity, does your creativity actually reflect in those objects? And is that something that your charity should take into account? And the key areas I tend to see where we're getting ethics coming to the fore, the creativity and IP, also bias, the environment, and the whole disinformation thing. The LGBTIQ plus community, the Jewish and Muslim communities are regularly attacked on that basis. So what are the legal objects of your charity? What ethical issues would reasonably fit within those objects? Not what you feel like. And then when you've got that, what are the actual ethical principles you're talking about? Fairness, transparency, accountability, sustainability, human rights. Which one is it? And why does that matter? Because if the answer is it doesn't matter, then why are you doing this? If it doesn't matter, just ignore it. So it could be, it would impact on my community. We care for women, and therefore this element of around deepfakes and all that that thing is like really important to us. It could be impacts on your reputation. You saw the one with Amnesty. It could be breach of compliance. Advertising Standards Agency's got guidance on AI. We wouldn't meet that. So there's a compliance issue there. Or it could be your values, the values that fundamentally underpin our objects. This just does not sit with those. Or your community's viewpoint. I've got a whole bunch of arty types. My arty group will not accept AI, full stop. Well, they're your community. They're the guys you work to serve. And one that I don't hear is weaponization. What a risk, even if you've done everything absolutely, totally perfectly. You're a Ukrainian charity. You do not want to expose children to social media, certainly not in the environment the Ukrainians have to operate in. So what you do is you create AI pictures of children for your fundraising. And then the Russian trolls come for you and go, look at that. They keep saying that we're killing people. They've got so little evidence, they're just making it up. And they're weaponizing your use of AI against you. So if you were a Ukrainian charity, for example, you may need to think about that. So if you're a charity that's likely to be attacked, then you might want to think there may be circumstances where, even if it sounds fabulous using AI, you may not wish to take that particular risk. And then, of course, it's the type of image you're talking about. So the amnesty one is clearly an emotive image. Rage bait is one of the favorites. I'm not saying amnesty work, but rage bait is obviously one of the things. But if you're doing the school poster and it's an archetypal Santa Claus of the same kind of cartoonish thing you've seen absolutely everywhere, you might say, well, actually, for Santa Claus, the school poster, I'm not bothered about that. Actually, when we start talking about real people and children and things, no, this is different. We need to think about this more. And what are you going to do with that? So you could endorse it. You could say, we will use this, but for artistic points, we believe that creativity is something that AI can be used to enhance. It should never be used to replace it. Are you going to set limits? We will use it for the Santa Claus posters for the Christmas fair. We will not use it when we're portraying our beneficiaries or where we're portraying children or women or whatever. And we've claimed that. And decisions. If it's 2 people and a dog running in the community centre, they might go, well, yeah, that sounds like a reasonable process to follow. If anyone ever asks us about energy use or stuff like that, that's the process we'll follow. If you're like me, where you work with those communities a great deal and where you have been trolled by various people, you may want to create an ethics statement. If you go into Charity Excellence and you look at ethics, do a little search thing, it will take you to it. You will find an entire page on ethics. And we hold absolutely robustly to it. We put that in the newsletter as a link every single month, and we have an email where we invite people to come back to us if they think we should change our ethics policy. And if someone then trolls me or attacks me, I simply go to the ethics policy, and this is how we operate. Our community are happy with this. This is fine. So that is how we approach it. And that's a screenshot. Charity Excellence Learning. We have 11 AI online courses. You don't need any AI expertise at all to use them. The one for boards and management looks at how you bring AI in the round to create your ethical position as a moral compass, and how you would then realistically embed that within your governance to make sure that it works for everyone. And that's me, and I'll shut up.
Thank you, Ian. Thanks so much. Always so pragmatic and practical. Thank you so much. So we are tight on time, which I thought we might be, because there's so much for us to go through. So I am just going to quickly kind of go through. Sorry, just one sec. That's not what I was meant to do. No. Sorry. That's what I was meant to do. Yeah, so obviously now we've kind of had to listen to all our panelists. Thank you all so much. That was really, really helpful. So the guidelines. So this is what we've been kind of building towards. So we have, from the report and the research that we've done, which we'll share with you all, we have created these guidelines. They're free, they're practical, they'll be sent to you all after this event, and we've deliberately kept them as simple and as accessible as possible, because we know you're busy and you don't need another 40-page document to go through. So they kind of cover 5 key areas. Firstly, what AI generated images actually are and how they work, because one of our biggest findings, like I've said, was that most people don't fully understand the technology, and if you don't understand how it works, you can't make good decisions about when to use it. Secondly, we've got the risks, and we're really clear about the red lines here about depicting people in poverty, crisis or trauma, imitating documentary photography, representing of beneficiaries. And for us, these just aren't grey areas. And then we go into where AI might be actually acceptable. So this isn't a blanket ban, and we know that charities will be using it. And there are lower risk uses, things like abstract illustrations, data visualizations, or obviously fantastical scenarios where you can't work, it's obvious it's AI. And then fourth, we've got practical implementation. So how to use prompts responsibly, which platforms more ethically sound than others, what your disclosure obligations are actually under the EU AI Act, like Laura was speaking about. And then fifthly, the safety considerations. So the questions you should be asking before you use any AI imagery at all. And the one question that that we really want every charity to ask themselves before posting an AI image is, how would our supporters feel if they knew that this was AI? And if that answer makes you feel uncomfortable, then that's probably your answer. And I do remember the conversation I had with you, Ian, and it stuck with me when you said, when you're working in charities, you used to imagine that there was one of your supporters sat in the corner in a chair, and would you want them to be, would you feel comfortable with them seeing what you were doing? And I think that's a really good visualization of would you feel comfortable with supporters knowing what you were doing, what prompts you were using? And if the answer is no, then don't. And just lastly, like as a personal thing from me, I really do believe that the charity sector has got the opportunity to lead the way on this. And I think we've got the power to shape what comes next, and we can together question platforms that use our images without consent. We can proactively remove harmful stereotypical imagery from our own databases and social media. We can be intentional about everything we create and share, knowing that it may train the next generation of AI. And I think we're in a really unique position to be the sector that stands out and the sector that continues to lead the way in ethical content creation. So you'll all get those guidelines and the report. I know we're really tight in terms of time, and we do have probably minutes to just answer any burning questions people have. We've got a couple in the question box, and if anyone's got any they want to quickly type in, please do so now. But yeah, Sarah, did you notice any that had come up in the question box at all that was common?
No, it's just the two that are still left open in the box that haven't been answered.
Okay.
If you do the ethics course, I have a download on ethical issues and what you can do, and it covers environmental imagery, and it's got just a whole series of ideas.
Okay, great. That should answer that first question then. Thanks, Ian. And does anyone have any tips for using AI to harvest our own earlier outputs and owned images? If anyone knows the answer to that one. No, I'm going to say that's a no, but we can look into that and get back to you. I've got a question that I was just going to ask everybody. So our research showed that the number one reason that charities are using AI is to protect identities. And yeah, I was just going to open it up to see what people felt about that, because I think for me, the concern there is that if you are using it to protect identities, the identities of the people that the learning models were trained on not necessarily had consent. So it feels like it's a bit of that's a bit of an ethical grey area, but I don't know if any of you have got any strong opinions on that at all.
The use of graphic imagery, modern cartoons, like super realistic, but where they're clearly not a photograph, is something I've seen some disability and women's charities actually using, because there's no way they can mislead people. But the graphic designer I spoke to, he said the big problem with that is you absolutely must get it spot on in terms of accuracy. And he made a mistake. He had it was a wheelchair. It was a very disabled person that had equipment on it, and he connected the equipment up wrong. And there's no way you could have known that kind of stuff. And he deeply offended people. And they said, well, you say you care about us, you say you're really engaged with us, and then you go and do a wheelchair image of us and you can't even get it right. And he said what he learned from that is that, yeah, you can create it, but then you take that back to your community and say, have I got this right? Is that a Maasai kilt or is that a West African kilt? And he said he learned from that, you absolutely must check that kind of stuff or you're at risk of offending people. And of course, that's something new we haven't seen before.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I think we've just got time for one more question. Sorry, Yassine, you go for
Can I
it.
quickly follow up on that?
Yeah, of
Yeah, I
course.
interviewed a comms person from West Africa. They're using photorealistic AI-generated images for pretty much everything. And it was a very interesting experience because they told me that, for instance, they couldn't even create images of ethnic minorities in the country because it's just statistically averaged, to the point that they just prompt for African and then they add items that might resemble that particular ethnic minority and their cultural attire and other signifiers. So yeah, it's I think it's quite interesting that there are people who are actually using photorealistic images, and these are some of the challenges that they face.
I was just going to agree. You have to describe visually exactly what needs to be in the image rather than just having stereotypes and like describing objects, describing appearances without the biases. And I think as designers and as people who will be creating things in the future, we have to understand that we will get it wrong, and having the humility to understand that I will get this wrong, just like your designer in. This has happened over and over and over again. And so just be aware that you will get it wrong.
Yeah.
Check with people.
Yeah. And a practical question for you, Anna, maybe you know the answer to this, or Ross, you might. So someone's asked when you talk about tagging images to show you've used AI, how do you do this? So I think that's if you're tagging rather than labeling.
You mean alt text over in websites or anything like that? Or is it actually like
Yeah, I
capturing
assume so.
images?
Yeah.
Okay. In alt text, always mention that it's created with AI. Hashtag it if you can. SEO, exactly the same. So if you have alternative text for your images, which ideally everyone should start to do that and describe the image as you see it rather than having the biases. So the prompt should give you enough ideas of how to tag that specific image. So if you've said Gen Z, black male, ages 20 to 30, you should have that as a tag in your alt image, as well as clearly state that this was created with AI, model, year. I would say that would be the best practice. And especially on social media, like Instagram makes you do it anyway. It says, was this image created with AI? Always say yes to that, even though we're not going to get into why Instagram is doing it, but it's good practice to do that. I don't know. Ross, do you have anything to add on that?
Not much to add. I think you did a great job. On my slide, you saw that every image was the photographer's name, and from where it was from Unsplash. It's not that different. If we currently credit photographers, it's not so different to credit the tool used, etc.
Yeah.
And I think people need to take metadata as something that everybody needs to do now. So the Women's Refuge, who's got the geolocation data switched on, the people that are uploading the high definition images, because that's your volunteer at the football match, people need to understand that if you're going to upload images now for social, make sure it's low DPI, because it'll screw the deep fakers, and that you don't put real names on. And that needs to be absolutely normal for all of us all of the time. And so I think metadata, I discovered it a year ago, but for all of us, it's got to be stuff that we're doing routinely and automatically now.
Yeah. And yeah, I think, well, I need to wrap up because we've gone over time, but yeah, it's an ongoing conversation. I think this has just proved that this is changing all the time, and it's a big topic with lots of different moving parts to it. So we've done our report, we've done the guidelines, but they will probably be updated regularly because things keep changing. But I just want to thank all of our panelists. Thank you so much for giving up your time and your knowledge and being so generous with it. And thank you all for coming along and just being open and interested in this topic, because it's something that we can't ignore. I think that's something, if you take away anything from this, I hope it's that this is happening. You can't ignore it. You need to have a stance on it. But yeah, thank you all so much. And we have lots of different training and workshops. So make sure you join our newsletter or just check out our website because we've got lots of other things coming up. But thank you all so much. Take care.